previously operating hosiery stores, Herbert H. Goldberger opened his first Hills department store, which would later become a discount store, in Youngstown, Ohio in 1957. In 1964, with 7 stores, Goldberger sold his company to the Shoe Company of America, SCOA Industries, but remained as president until 1981, when his son Stephen took over. In 1985, Herbert Goldberger, who was vice president and director of SCOA, with the help of Thomas Lee, acquired SCOA through a leveraged buyout valued at $642 million. This acquisition began the downfall for Hills due to debt. 2 years later, Hills went public and became the 8th largest discounter in the nation. Henry Goldberger died in 1987. In 1989, Hills bought 35 Gold Circle locations from Federated Department Stores, and on November 26, 1989, Hills reported sales of $1.5 billion year-to-date. By the end of the 1980s, Hills also had their own private label children and adult basic clothing line known as American Spirit. Stephen Goldberger resigned in November 1990 and was replaced by Jack Brulard. Hills executives and employees were surprised that Goldberger had resigned. Stephen had brought many new ideas to Hills, including UPC scanning and the acceptance of credit cards. By the end of 1990, with stores in 14 states, Hills' bankruptcy was threatening with assets and liabilities of nearly $1 billion. They were struggling to meet their interest and debt obligations. As the months continued, debt increased, and after acquiring the 35 Gold Circle stores, the slow economy and recession in the early 1990s made matters worse. In 1991, with 214 stores, Hills filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in February. Michael Bozick, who had previously spent 27 years with Sears and was the head of the Sears merchandising group, began his tenure as president and CEO of Hills. The same year, they closed underperforming stores, and the number of stores went to 151, with each store averaging around 115 employees. Many of the stores that closed were former Gold Circle locations that had been unsuccessful in transitioning to the Hills merchandising format. Hills and Bozick wanted to concentrate on other areas with less competition, since a lot of Walmart's and k-mart locations had come into areas where Hills were once successful but were now struggling. Bozick made changes, including new distribution centers, store remodels, and a new store prototype that included a larger toy section. Year-round, their toy section made up 10% of its sales. By opening new distribution centers, vendors could send merchandise directly to the center instead of each store. In 1992, Kmart was spending nearly $2 million per store, while Hills was spending $650,000 with their new tactics. With such changes, by 1993, Hills came out of bankruptcy. In regards to competitor, Bozick stated, quote, "The trick is to dance with them and not fight with them," end quote. By the end of 1993, sales at the remodeled stores, 78 of the 151 locations, were $1.76 billion. Hills opened up their first new store in 1994. It had been 4 years since they opened a new store, and this location was a former Kmart store. Sales in 1994 were $1.8 billion, even after remodeling more stores, and the following year they opened 15 new locations. With financial struggles accumulating with debt, Dick Stein Partners tried to take over power from Bozick and numerous other executives for 2 years. Dick Stein owned just under 10% of Hills' common shares and pitched a stock repurchase plan. Bozick and other executives were worried that Dick Stein's plans would add more debt, at least $150 million, to their already high debt that they were finally starting to decrease. Finally, on July 5, 1995, Bozick and most of the senior executives resigned from the company. Their vice president, Jack Smales, stepped in as CEO. The following year, Chairman Dick Stein resigned and Cham Edelstein stepped in. The same time Dick Stein resigned, so did Jack Smales, who was replaced by Gregory Raven. During this time, with 164 stores, they wanted to expand beyond the Northeast and South. Wanting to make changes, Raven said, quote, "We're taking every system we have and throwing them away," end quote, to include new systems and operations. By the end of 1998, Hills had 155 stores in 12 states when they were acquired by Ames. At this time, Ames had 301 stores and instantly went to 456 and went to the fourth largest discounter behind Walmart, Kmart, and Target. By the end of 1999, most of the previous Hill stores had changed names to Ames. Unfortunately, Ames struggled after purchasing Hills and themselves had closed by 2002.